So good morning, students. And today we will be continuing with the chapter life process, which we were discussing. And now we are in the topic of respiration. In the topic of respiration, we have already defined respiration. Then we defined the type of respiration. Then the various biochemical pathway regarding the breakdown of the glucose we have discussed. We also discussed the respiration in plants, and we in our last class we started with the human respiratory system, where we all have drawn the diagram for the human respiratory system, and today we will discuss the process of human respiration. First of all, students, before starting, can anyone tell me which is our main respiratory organ? Which is our main respiratory organ? Through the chat box also you can give the reply, or if you can raise your hand, I will unmute you. Raise your hand so that I can unmute you. Which is our main respiratory organ? Okay, Ayush. Ayush, unmute yourself. I've given you the option, unmute yourself, Ayush.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ayush, which is our main respiratory organ?
Sir, lungs.
Lungs. And how many lungs do we have?
Sir, 2.
Okay. Okay, fine. So definitely correct that lung is our major respiratory organ. Now all of you, you just, yes, the diagram is highlighted over here regarding the human respiratory system. The human respiratory system definitely involves lungs and air passage. The air passage starts from nostril, through which air is taken into the body. And air passage is lined with fine hairs and mucus to filter the air. Now, all of you look to the diagram. Let me enlarge it. Yes, you can see the diagram very well. Here, the respiratory system begins with the nasal passage. Okay, this area is the nasal passage. Okay, this area is the nasal passage. And this nasal passage, which we are saying as the nostrils, the nostril leads into, there are two openings which lead into a common passage which is called nasal passage. This nasal passage is lined with fine hair and mucus. Why it is lined with the fine hair and the mucus? When we are respiring, student, it is not like that only the respiratory gases are going inside our nasal passage. Dust particles also comes along with it. And you will notice that intermittently in our nasal passage, the materials get accumulated along with the mucus. Okay, so these fine hairs which is present in the nasal passage, they help to filter the air which we are inhaling. Got it? So finally, the small dust particles which are coming along with the air, they are being trapped by the fine hairs and the mucus which is present in the nasal passage. Is it clear? The function of the nasal passage is clear to all? Through the chat box, you simply write yes or no, whatever which suits to you. Just give me, so that part wise I will move one by one. I will move with the part. Okay, yes, I got the feedback from the students. Okay. Now you see, after the nasal passage, this nasal passage is leading. One very important thing to be told over here, student, our mouth cavity. Okay, though mouth cavity is not the part of the human respiratory system, but then also I will tell you this mouth cavity and this nasal passage, they become common after some time. Okay, That is why sometimes if anything from our nasal passage, if we are with the force we are trying to engulf it, then the material comes in our mouth also. Okay, the material comes in our mouth also. Now this nasal passage and the mouth, they open into a common tube. Now before opening into the common tube, you can see here the parts pharynx and the larynx. The larynx, students, do you know what is the larynx? This part, larynx. Anyone in class 8 also, you all have studied what larynx is? Raise your hand if you know the answer so that I can unmute you. Larynx. We are about to discuss the larynx. Anyone? Okay. Okay, Ayush again raised his hand. Okay, Ayush, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ayush, what is larynx?
The larynx are the voice box of humans that vibrate to produce sound.
Yes, and that is why it is also called Adam's apple, because our throat, this area get enlarged because of this larynx. Okay, fine. Now, the nasal passage and the mouth cavity open into the common tube, and this tube is called windpipe, and windpipe or trachea. Now, very interestingly, just a moment. Very interestingly, this trachea, just a moment. Yes. This trachea is surrounded by the ring of cartilage. How it looks, I am again drawing this for you. Suppose this is a pipe. Okay, suppose this is a pipe, that is a windpipe trachea, and the ring of cartilage is present in this manner. The ring of cartilage is surrounding the trachea. Now, why it is surrounding? Because it prevents the windpipe from getting collapsed. Collapse means it shuts. So this ring of cartilage is surrounding the windpipe, the trachea, so that to protect it from getting collapsed. Now see the next part. This trachea, before going into the lung, is divided into the branch which is called bronchi. Okay, so two bronchi is there. One is going into the left lung and the other is going into the right lung. After going into the lung, this bronchi divide into a balloon-like structure, or we can say the bronchi terminates into a structure called bronchiole. So if I want to show you again this with the help of a more simplified image, suppose this is a windpipe. Okay, suppose this is a windpipe, and these two are the branches of the windpipe. Okay, these two are the branches of the windpipe. Suppose this is a lung. Suppose this is a hypothetical diagram I'm showing you so that to make the concept more clear. Suppose this is a lung, which I'm showing again. So this is the trachea. This T I'm writing for trachea. This I'm writing for BR, I'm writing for bronchi. And after going into the lung, let me use a separate color. This bronchi divides into the further branches called bronchioles. I hope now this is very clear to you all. So these branches are called bronchioles. This I am writing as BO. Okay. And now, is it clear to all how the division is made? And now you see, students, the next part where I will give more clarity. This bronchiole, this blue color bronchiole, now I'm changing the color. This blue color bronchiole terminates into a balloon-like structure. Okay, this blue color bronchiole is terminating into a balloon-like structure, and this balloon-like structure is called alveoli. Actually, this is the image, alveoli. Okay, in enlarged view, it is given the balloon-like structure, and this is the alveoli or the balloon-like structure where exchange of gases occur. Now, this is very important, students. So once again, I'm telling you all regarding the parts. The human respiratory system starts with the nasal passage. The mouth cavity and the nasal passage is a common one, which is opening into the windpipe, the trachea. The windpipe remains surrounded by a ring of cartilages which protect the trachea from getting collapsed when the air is not present. Before going into the lung, the trachea divides into the branches, which is called bronchi. After going to the lung, it is called bronchioles. And finally, the bronchiole terminate into the balloon-like structure, which is called alveoli. And it is the alveoli through which exchange of gases occur in case of the human respiratory system. I hope it should be clear to all the students. Now, who can discuss regarding the structure when what I have discussed just now? The diagram is here in front on your screen, and now just raise your hand who can discuss this diagram which I have regarding the human respiratory system which we have discussed just now. Anyone raise your hand so that I can unmute you. Let me check the participation list also. Okay, Tanvi, unmute yourself. Yes, Tanvi, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Tanvi, go for the human respiratory system diagram part, which I have told. The diagram is on your screen. You can take the help from it also. Regarding the human respiratory system, what are the parts? I think again got muted. Okay, Tanvi, you can unmute yourself.
Sir, first we breathe air and it enters to the nostril, then nasal passage.
Okay. Yes. Then Tanvi.
Then from
Yes, Tanvi, go ahead. You are audible.
Then from pharynx to larynx, and then it enters to the trachea.
Okay. Then
And then bronchi, and from bronchioles to lungs.
okay. Now, before going, one thing, Tanvi, before going into the lung, what is a branch of the trachea called? That means immediately before entering into the lung. The trachea, which is a common tube, okay, and now it is going inside the lung. So, what that branch is called? Okay, Tanvi, you can now unmute mute yourself. Ayush, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ayush, what is that branch called? Can you briefly discuss from the beginning, Ayush?
Sir, air enters through the nostrils.
Fine.
Then the nasal passage.
Okay, go ahead.
Then it enter into the throat. Throat is surrounded by ring of cartilage, which ensure that the air passage does not collapse inside the trachea.
Okay.
Then the trachea divides into two bronchi.
Bronchi, very good.
When they enter the lung, they further divide into balloon-like structure called alveolar sacs.
Okay. And what is the function of this alveolar sac?
Gaseous exchange.
Very good. Well explained. All the mechanism. Very good, Ayush. Okay. So definitely, yes. Now it is clear to you all. After this, students, we will come to very important part of human respiratory system. That is the mechanism of inhalation and exhalation. For this, first we have to get into account one thing, student. In the beginning of the class, when we were discussing about respiration, I told you don't confuse yourself with the breathing and the respiration, and don't consider it as the same. Because I told you, can anyone remember what is the basic difference between breathing and respiration? Can anyone say what is the difference between breathing and respiration? Roshan, you can unmute yourself. Okay, Ayush, I have seen you have raised your hand. Let once Roshan try, and then I will come to you. Roshan,
Yes, sir.
Yes, Roshan, can you tell me what is the difference between breathing and respiration?
Yes, sir.
What is the difference between breathing and respiration?
Breathing and respiration.
Okay, Roshan, you can take your time. I'm unmuting you, muting you again, no problem. Meanwhile, Ayush, you raised your hand for answering. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ayush, what is
Yes,
the
sir.
basic difference between breathing and respiration?
Sir, breathing only includes inhalation and exhalation, but respiration is the oxidative breakdown of food to produce energy.
Very good, very good. Okay, Ayush. Yes, students, in the beginning of the class only I told you that the food material which we are taking is at the cellular level, it is getting oxidized. And when it is getting oxidized, that time energy is produced. But we are taking in air, giving out CO2. That is not called respiration. That is called breathing. So we can say breathing is a part of respiration. Only taking air and giving out CO2, that comes into account of breathing. Now, this breathing has two steps, or the two steps are there in case of the breathing. First, I will discuss the inhalation. That is, just a moment. Yes, first I'm discussing the inhalation. Just a moment. Okay. Now, students, see what happens in this process. Let me talk with here. Yes. See, first of all, student, few very important points I will tell over here regarding inspiration. Inspiration is taking in of air or inhalation. But remember one thing, only three parts you will remember, that what happens during inhalation, and the rest part becomes when we will talk about exhalation, that when we give out air, it is opposite. When we breathe in air, think for the own student mechanism. When we are breathing in air, this part, or if in the diagram we can see on the screen my image. Okay, all of you try by yourself. When we are breathing in air, okay, the ribs are the bones which surrounds the lung. This rib cage move upward and outward. Okay, see my image. Okay, before seeing into the diagram, when we are breathing in air, the ribs move upward and outward. And this part is the diaphragm, which is holding, or we can say at the bottom, you can see I am just let me change the color. This part is the diaphragm, which hold the lungs. It is a muscular organ. Now this diaphragm contract and move inward and downward. So when we are saying this part, our lung, when we are breathing in air, this rib cage move upward and outward. The diaphragm, which is connecting the lung, this contract and move inward and downward. As a result, what happened? When we are breathing in air, the volume of the thoracic cavity, this part, which is I'm highlighting the diagram, this is our thoracic cavity. Okay, and the volume increases. Now, student, when the volume increases, what will happen to the pressure? the pressure decreases or pressure increases? Think, when we are inhaling air, our ribs move upward and outward. The volume of the thoracic cavity increases. The diaphragm contract and move inward and downward. So what do you think? The volume of the thoracic cavity will increase or decrease? Through the chat box, you can give me the reply. The volume increases, very good. And the pressure definitely decreases. So air from outside rushes into the lung to maintain the pressure. Once again, I'm telling you, we are talking about inhalation or breathing in air. When we are breathing in air, the ribs move upward and outward. The diaphragm contracts, move downward, inward and downward. So what happened? The volume of the thoracic cavity, increases and the pressure decreases. So air from outside rushes into the lung, definitely through the nasal passage, to maintain the pressure. This is called inhalation. Now, inhalation is clear to all, because if the inhalation is clear, then exhalation you will make exactly opposite, because all the part, everything opposite. Tell me through the chat box, quickly send me your feedback. Through the chat box, quickly send me your feedback that whether it is clear to you or not. Yes or no, quickly you write down in the chat box so that I can understand and I will proceed further, or I will repeat it. Ishan raised his hand. Okay. Ishan, through the chat box you send whatever you are saying, yes or no. Okay, Ayush said yes. Okay, quickly students, through the chat box you send me a reply. Okay, Ishan, Tanvi. Don't hesitate. Okay, whatever you felt, yes or no you write, so that I can understand how much you have incorporated, or I will repeat again. Okay, okay, okay. Some of the students have said once again. Okay, once again I'm telling you. Think. See my video. Okay. When I'm breathing air, this is called inhalation. When we are taking in air, inhalation or inhaling. Okay. When we are breathing in air, the ribs move upward and outward. The diaphragm, okay, this diaphragm, this part, which is being highlighted in the diagram, this part you can see the diaphragm contract, okay, contract and move inward. That means it goes in downside, okay, downward. When you try to go downward and your ribs move upward, outward, the volume of the thoracic cavity increase. And when the volume of the thoracic cavity increase, the pressure will decrease. So air from outside, matlab lung, in the lung the pressure has decreased. So from outside air will rush quickly into the lung to maintain the pressure, so that our respiratory organ do not collapse. Got it? Now is it clear to all? Now those who have asked to repeat, is it clear? Okay, fine. Yes, I got the feedback. And now student, think for exhalation. Everything opposite. And again see my video. When we are exhaling out, giving out air, the ribs move inward. Always make opposite to inhalation. In inhalation, what we say? The ribs move upward and outward. Exhalation mein upward opposite will be downward, and outward opposite will be inward. So during exhalation, our ribs move inward and downward. Opposite, diaphragm relax and move upward and outward. ऐसे relax हो रहा है, move upward and outward, coming to our original position. So what will happen to the volume of the thoracic cavity? This time tell me, it will increase or decrease? It will decrease. Volume of the thoracic cavity decrease, and when the volume decrease, pressure will, when the volume decreases, pressure will increase. Very good. And as a result, air is given out of the lung. Okay. So this time I want each and every student should answer to my question. Please explain the mechanism of inhalation one by one. Inhalation. Okay, Tanvi raised her hand very quickly. Okay, Tanvi, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Said during inhalation, our ribs moves upward and downward, and the diaphragm contract, and the volume of thyroxine cavity increases, and pressure will increase.
okay. Tanvi, one mistake you have done. You said our ribs move upward and downward. When it will move upward, automatically it goes outward, not downward. Got it, Tanvi?
Okay, sir.
Okay, only one word was there which you mistook, which you have mistaken. Okay, okay, Tanvi, good. Now, Ayush, explain the same. I want inhalation to be
Yes,
explained.
sir.
Cool.
So the inhalation means the taking in of air. When we take in air, ribs moves upward and outward, and the diaphragm contract and move inward and downward.
Very good.
Volume of the thoracic cavity increases and hence pressure decreases. Air from outside rushes into our respiratory tract so that our respiratory organs does not collapse.
Okay, Ayush. Okay, very good. Again, Roshan, unmute yourself, Roshan. At last, I will interact regarding this only. Roshan, unmute yourself. Because this is very important, student, the mechanism of inhalation and the exhalation. It's very important. I think there is some net issue from your side. Yes, Roshan. Okay, no problem. Ayush Kumar. Ayush Kumar, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ayush
sir.
Kumar, go ahead.
Sir, in the process of inhalation, we take in the air and ribs, our ribs give outward
Moves, yes.
and diaphragm become flat.
Hmm. Yes, then?
And when we exhale air from our body,
No, no,
then
now only tell me
diaphragm-
about inhalation. Exhalation, I will ask again. Exhalation, we will come separately. First, let me get it that all of you have got into account it properly or not. Okay, okay, Ayush, okay, ठीक है. Now many, okay. Okay, okay, again. Okay, Ayush Singh. Okay, Ayush, again unmute yourself for exhalation.
Yes, sir.
Exhalation, Ayush.
Sir, opposite happens in the exhalation when we give out air, in which our ribs move inward and downward, and diaphragm expands outward and upward.
Okay.
A volume of the thoracic cavity increases.
Okay, fine. Okay, yes, correct. Well said. So this was, students, about inhalation and the exhalation. One very important thing regarding the human respiratory system is our respiratory pigment. In human, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin or the RBC, and it has a high affinity for oxygen. Though, see what happens, students, I'm just sharing with you. Just a moment. Yes, you can see here, students, one diagram is there. Let me enlarge it. In our blood, we all know RBC, the red blood cell. Okay, the red blood cell, though in the portion of the circulation, we will also do this. These are the component of the blood, red blood corpuscle. Why the red blood corpuscle is red? Students, through the chat box, you give me the reply. Why the RBC is red? Through the chat box, quickly, give me the reply. Why the RBC is red? Okay, due to the presence of hemoglobin. Well said. Okay, now you see, within the lung, this oxygen, the oxygen combines with the hemoglobin molecule. Okay, that is called oxyhemoglobin. And in this form, it is carried to the tissue. Okay, you can see over here, the blue color indicate the O2 molecules, and then these circular structures are indicating the hemoglobin. Now, this form, in the form of the oxyhemoglobin, let me use the text, in the form of oxyhemoglobin, the oxygen is carried into the tissue. In the tissue, the hemoglobin releases oxygen, and in the tissue, the CO2 which is produced, that combined with hemoglobin and in the form of carboxyhemoglobin. Okay, I'm showing you again, and in the form of carboxyhemoglobin, this carbon dioxide is carried from the tissue to the lung for giving out of the CO2. So you can see very well, this respiratory pigment, hemoglobin, is responsible for both carrying of the O2 and CO2. In the form of oxyhemoglobin, oxygen combines with the hemoglobin, and that is called oxyhemoglobin. In that form, it is carried from the lung to the tissue. In the tissue, oxygen is used up, and now in the lung, in the tissue where the CO2 is produced, this CO2 combined with hemoglobin, it is called carboxyhemoglobin, and in this form it is carried in the lung for elimination out of the CO2. Is it clear to all? Through the chat box, you give me the reply. Okay. Now, student, definitely today's assignment for you all will be to prepare the mechanism of inhalation and exhalation, definitely.